Welcome to Norse Code, the number one podcast for Minnesota Vikings. I'm your host and producer. My name is James Pagashnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from the Wide Left Substack. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, first off, happy birthday. And second off, can we have a discussion as to when garbage time actually starts? Because if you want to be technical, you could look at it as that garbage time really started for the Packers with about 5 minutes left in the second quarter.
Yeah, but if you did that, you would be committing war crimes. Have you thought about that?
I'm just trying to think the way that Peter Bukowski does, and I'm just not committed enough to the bit to be that much of an idiot.
So according to ESPN's win probability chart, when the win probability crossed the 90% threshold, it was 6 minutes left in the game, 6:13 left in the fourth quarter. Minnesota up 31, Green Bay 22, which would suggest that the final 90 yards of Jordan Love's passing do not contribute to our evaluation of him. That's, I mean, but I wouldn't dare tell Peter Bukowski that the 90 yards weren't real. That's why would I say that?
No, that's I tried my best to put out a tweet or two that was inflammatory enough to be like a Bukowski tweet, and I just can't smack my head against the wall hard enough to get to the point where I got it. This is it. I can commit to this. I can't be sincere with it. It's the sincerity that kills me.
Yeah, no, that's a personal failing of yours that I encourage you to work on. But I think if we were to include that, wouldn't this mean that the Packers offense is anti-clutch? Because, yeah, sure, the Vikings turned it over on downs, but that was inside, the 5-yard line. The Packers threw an interception and had a fumble on a passing play inside of quote-unquote garbage time, if that is even its real name.
That is an excellent point. That big defensive... if you're going to brag about your defense, you have to, brag about the dumb crap your offense did too. Wonderful. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that we reached this point of going full Bukowski, if only just to have this moment that we get to share here and go, yeah, the Packers did suck. Good. The Packers get to spend the rest of their time doing what the Cowboys fans got to do for all of last week. Well, I suppose all of the 4 games between their games, which was, look how good we almost were. Fantastic.
After the Vikings, 2021, it feels good to see the other side of that play out.
Yeah, it was different. Well, welcome to this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys are all doing well. We are here to discuss the win over the Packers. The Vikings did it. The first half was about as decisive as it could have been, minus a bit of weirdness at the very end, and the Packers caught up a little bit, and the Vikings ended up doing enough to win out the game. So we've got that to talk about. We have some stuff around the league to discuss as well, and the mailbag. But before we start, again, thank you guys so much for listening to Norse Code. If you enjoy the show and would like to help us out financially, you can do so a couple of different ways. You can go over to patreon.com/NorseCode. For $3.50 a month, or a little less for the year subscription, you get access to bonus episodes, which another one will be coming out on Tuesday. You get access to the Discord, all of that over on Patreon, patreon.com/NorseCode. A special thank you to the 2 people who signed up this week, to Colin Carlson and to Tracy Chips. Thank you so much for signing up over on Patreon. Really do appreciate it. It definitely helps keep us ad-free, helps keep us in a situation where we can buy things that we need when they break, like my laptop is starting to get a little, let's say, evil. It's not crossing into season 1 Dusty's laptop territory, but
fugitive. Yeah,
it is getting it's getting some thoughts. It's visiting some websites I'm not approving of. So we'll see if it gets fully radicalized here.
Wow. Anti-free speech over here. Not letting the marketplace of ideas win out on your laptop. That's
Look,
not great.
I'm concerned because it's only a few years old and it doesn't. I don't think that its brain is fully like formed enough to be able to make cognizant, these sorts of things. But in any case, thank you so much for signing up over on Patreon. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode as well for a one-time donation, or you can go over to norsecode.threadless.com and pick up any number of wonderful Norse Code pieces of merchandise, including the shirts, the baby onesies, the shower curtains, there's a flag, all of these wonderful things, and the Wiggler stickers as well over on Threadless. So check that out, norsecode.threadless.com. We announced this at the end of episode 524, and I mentioned it last episode as well, but we are doing a live show. We have confirmed it. In Eagan, Minnesota on December 12th, Union 32 Craft House, where we've done our shows before, is going to host us once again on that Thursday night. December 12th, it's right before the Vikings-Bears Monday night game, so we will be giving away tickets to that game at that show. We'll also be throwing out some merch as well, probably some Wigglers and a couple of things as well. But if you are interested in checking us out, live show, Eagan, Minnesota, December 12th, Union 32 Craft House. We packed the place last time. I'm hoping that we can do so again because it was so much fun, and I promise that it will be louder this time as far as the speaker situation is concerned, so you'll be able to hear it in the back. We did not expect to have as many people last time as we did. So I will take it upon myself as a personal goal to make sure everyone in the building can hear it.
Yeah. Alternately, we could just yell the whole time, although I think that'll screw up the recording.
It might not. Well, it basically sounds like we're kind of raising our voice during the live shows anyway, but we're not trying to yell at you. We're just trying to make sure that everyone can.
We're yelling with you.
Exactly. Well, we were watching the Packers lose against the Titans, if I remember correctly, on that Thursday night when we did the live show.
That was fun. Yeah.
we were providing live commentary to an Aaron Rodgers loss. It was a beautiful thing. And we'll get to talk about another Aaron Rodgers loss later this episode. But let's get into the review of the Packers game. This was in Lambeau. The Vikings won their Super Bowl this year, so just take a moment and enjoy it. Unlike last year, nobody tore an ACL, or nobody tore an Achilles, rather, after winning their Super Bowl. So that's good. That's different. And I suppose the thing I want to mention first is that Jordan Addison really seems to like playing in Lambeau.
Yeah, my gosh.
Welcome
he's
back,
not
dude.
bad at Lambeau. I mean, it's just a short highway drive away. I mean, the Vikings usually fly to games, so I can imagine Jordan Addison really enjoying the games that are drivable, because it's close by.
The man picked up a hell of a lot of yardage, had a real nice touchdown, just about had a second as well. Dude was able to make some real good plays out there.
Yeah, 72 yards on 3 receptions, none of them, consuming the entirety of that reception total. So it's not like 3 receptions, 72 yards, longest reception of 70 yards or anything like that. The longest was 29. Did a great job. So what I really liked about this game, so both Jordan Addison and Jalen Nailor both kind of fulfilled this function. Nailor only had 1 reception on 2 targets, Addison 3 on 4 targets. But what was interesting is that, so Jefferson finishes the game. Justin Jefferson finishes the game with 85 yards. So he leads, the group in total receiving yards. He led the group in efficiency too. So like yards per target or EPA per target, whatever, right? That's great. But for most of the game, Jordan Addison was the leader in receiving yards. And it's pretty clear what happened there, right? Jefferson drew a ton of attention, as he typically does, but especially without Jair Alexander. The Packers doubled him for most of the game, or rotated a safety on top of him, whatever you want to call double teaming in coverage, because there's like a bunch of ways that you can characterize it as double teaming. Whatever it was, there were more bodies on whatever side of the field Justin Jefferson was on. And in the past, the Vikings have had to lean on people like Brandon Powell, last year a little bit Jordan Addison, but had to lean on other receivers to kind of make up that ground. And here, I think we finally kind of saw what that offense can look like, with Addison, having developed as much as he has, Jalen Nailor developing as much as he had, seeing how dangerous and deadly it can be when an offense overfocuses on Jefferson and realizing that they can't just throw all the resources to stopping one guy. But when they stop throwing all the resources to stopping one guy, that guy goes off in the fourth quarter, right? So it was really cool because Addison provides in this game, provided a really good template for what it looks like when the Vikings take advantage of all of the problems created by Jefferson in like tertiary ways. So instead of, hey, I think, and this is no knock on KJ Osborne or anything like that, who was pretty reliable for the Vikings, but instead of saying, I think I can get KJ Osborne in this third down because there's not a ton of receptions, I think Jordan Addison can score here, which is, it's a totally different feeling. And I really like that both of them have been able to materialize in this way because, we didn't get both of them healthy, obviously, for the year until this game. We'll wait when Hawkinson, who Adam Schefter reported is either going to be available. Did you say October 24th? I want to see that tweet again. But is going to be available soon. Having that fully operational is going to be big. But right now, we've got something pretty close to a fully staffed receiving core with the three of those, plus, of course, Aaron Jones, who had 46 yards receiving in this game, having him as a potential receiver. So the return to play date is currently likely Thursday night, October 24th in Los Angeles, according to Schefter. And if it's not, that's the following week's home game against the Colts. So that's going to be huge when they get him back. But it's really cool to see kind of what the potential of this offense looks like.
And, let's be clear, Addison scored on a sweep that was blocked by Jefferson. Like, that was about as perfect. And at first, I was like, I actually had to replay the thing. I was like, how the hell did he get in there? Like, it was a full-on trick. It was great. It was a great sweep.
Yeah, incredible. I hate this is the phrase for it. Incredible ball handling from Sam Darnold. Because I think he does it with his opposite hand, which actually this is also something Kirk Cousins was good at. But he does it like with his opposite hand, handing it off and then pretending to hand it off to, I think it was Aaron Jones was net running back in that one, pretending to hand it off to Aaron Jones and then actually really quickly, because Addison's right there, like he's right on it, actually giving it to Addison. Oh man, Derrick Henry's having a game, huh? Jesus.
We are recording this, by the way, during the Thursday night football game due to the
Sunday night football.
Sorry, during the Sunday night football game. Thank you. Due to the 6-hour time difference that we are currently experiencing.
Yeah. But yeah, like that was really nice to see. I think one thing that when you start watching like quarterbacks break down quarterback film, they value a lot of different things that you might not value as much or you wouldn't expect would be as important. And when you watch like Chase Daniel or a Dan Orlovsky or JT O'Sullivan break down quarterback play, one thing that they consistently talk about with somebody like Kirk Cousins is how refined and drilled he is when it comes to handoff mechanics, whether that is on an actual handoff or whether it's on a play fake. Having that level of detail is really important. And it opens up plays like this, where obviously Addison's speed plays a big role. The ability of the offense to get everything timed together, to get that snap off, that all plays a big role. Aaron Jones being a genuine threat, that plays a big role. All that's true, right? But being able to hold, an outside linebacker from trying to set the edge for just a millisecond plays a huge role too, and really effective handoff mechanics can do that. And that's what we saw with Sam Darnold here, which is really cool to see. So yeah, Addison was super fun in this game. Like actually, when he got that, I was like, oh my God, they're showing the Packers how to use Jaden Reed, which the Packers have been using him really well, but it was the Jaden Reed role, but against the Packers.
It was, there were a couple of like really nice moments in that first half specifically. There were a couple of we can start talking touchdown passes because there were 3 of them. We had the first one I have to bring up is Jefferson, because that one I'm not the only person who rewatched that over and over to try to figure out how the hell he caught that. It seemed like it got Jefferson right above the numbers, which he was like almost ready to get, but it bounced between him and the defender back to Jefferson to make the catch.
Yeah, I mean, when you watch it live, it looks like it just teleports through the defender.
Right through him. Right through
Yeah,
him.
it was a video game glitch, man. It was like in the world, like you watch that and you're playing like Madden or NCAA, you're throwing your controller through the screen. That's like BS, dude. Like you clip it and show it on Twitter to show how mad you are at this game. But instead, actually, never mind. This ruled. It was. I don't know how much of it was precision or how much of it was luck. Who's to say? But it was perfectly thrown at Jefferson's numbers right behind the defensive back's back, right? And he just actually there was a Stephon Diggs catch back. I think it was in 2017. No, it must have been because I don't think it was Keenum. I think it was 2018 or 2019. Just a sideline throw where the ball just appears in his hands at the sideline. It felt like that, where it's like, I don't know how you knew to put your hands there or to catch the ball once it arrived. But yeah, you did both of those things. That's pretty cool. There's a story in that Alec Lewis wrote last year that actually Lewis was talking to Jefferson's not LSU's like athletic trainer, but whoever's in charge of like the science, analytics, and health department at LSU, which is maybe the most advanced such department in college football. One of the things that they did was test Jefferson's or everybody's eye dominance. Who has because you might be familiar if you've ever closed one eye and then closed the other. You have a dominant eye, the one that kind of controls most of your vision. Maybe that was a poor characterization of what the dominant eye is, but you understand what I mean when you do that. Jefferson is a rare individual in that he's like, I think it's 1 in 10,000 people, in that he has no dominant eye, or you could call it both dominant eyes. But what it allows him to look over either shoulder and instantly figure out kind of what's going on based off of a glance. He also has really quick cognitive processing and make adjustments regardless of kind of what position he's in. And take in information, I think, in an actionable way a lot easier because of that, because he's not spatially restricted like the rest of us are. And that's what that reminded me of on that catch. It's like you got like half an eyeball on the actual football and you knew exactly what you needed to do. That's crazy, my guy. Like, yeah, Jefferson is a really great route runner. That's true. Jefferson is extremely strong as a receiver. That's true. He's pretty fast as a receiver. That's all true. He's very quick. That's all true. But like on top of that, you get this like freak ability to just kind of know where the ball is going to be, which is like an under-discussed element of how good a receiver he is. But Jesus, that was awesome.
Yeah, that was about as cool a touchdown catch as he is capable of having. And I guess what I was seeing throughout the game was that, at least with the first touchdown pass to, I believe that was to Naylor, that it seemed like we should have been going over the top of these corners as much as possible because they were running out their number 3 and number 4 corners like all game. They didn't have their number 1 and number 2 because they were hurt.
Yeah. I don't know if Valentine's the number 2, but he's certainly a starter, right? So like obviously they're missing Jerry Alexander, they're missing Valentine. And yeah, so they went at Ballantyne. Jesus, why do they have 2 anyway? But yeah, in this one, the problem here, I don't think it was even that the cornerback made a mistake. I think the play call made a mistake a little bit here. I mean, the cornerback obviously screwed up a little bit because he sat on the double move for too long from Addison. But so this is the first touchdown of the game. Addison runs a double move. The corner just kind of sits for too long. Addison's wide open, perfect touchdown, easy pitch and catch, basically. The announcer, Trent Green, kind of points out that it looks like he's looking for safety help. There is no safety help. And the reason for that might be because the safety was held by Jefferson's route. I don't know that that's quite true. It might be true because if he was expecting single high coverage and Addison is breaking to the inside, so that safety would be able to help in that scenario, that safety is occupied by Jefferson. You can kind of see on the broadcast footage that, Jefferson beats his corner. That's great. And the safety is just kind of tracking Jefferson instead of paying attention to the way the route combination is playing out, because Jefferson's running a dig route. So Addison's open over the top. There's no safety there like the cornerback seemingly expected. Boom. easy touchdown. So, yeah, I mean, that's like when I was earlier talking about like how Jefferson is drawing attention away and it's opening up these other players. These other players are making good on the space that's being afforded to them, but that's exactly how you get that. I think Darnold expected this the whole time. I don't know that his eyes moved from Addison. Like he was just like, yeah, that's going to be open. Give it a second. There it is.
Yep.
Touchdown.
Apologies for thinking that was Naylor for a moment. No, that was definitely Addison. But this was a great performance by Sam Darnold. Like it worked out really well. I'm speaking of the first half. Things kind of went a little odd in the second, but as far as the first half was concerned, there was a point around 5-ish minutes left in the second quarter where the Vikings were up 28-0 and were in a position to like not look back. This was as dominant a performance in Lambeau as we've seen. I think there's only one game where they'd scored more than that, and for as far as like a lead was concerned.
Yeah, I mean, there were obviously some mistakes that he made, but I think that if we had cut the game off after the first half, we'd say fantastic. Don't throw that near pick that you threw again, but otherwise fantastic, right? It was like the second throw of the game or something like that, or like, because he went 3 of 4 on the first drive.
Yeah.
The incompletion was a dropped pick from Isaiah McDuffie, and had he corralled that in, maybe the whole tenor of the game looks a little bit different. In my piece covering the game, I go over a litany of Sam Darnold mistakes. I'm like, hey, he made a mistake here, he made a mistake here, he made a mistake here, here's this problem here. And I don't want to take away from the fact that the offense performed really well with Sam Darnold at the helm. The Vikings were 4-0, so that's the context for this next sentence, which is that Sam Darnold had the worst game of his Vikings career of the 4 that he's had. Now, some of those games were spectacular, so it's a pretty high bar to try to keep performing at. So the worst is not actually that big a deal. And then also keep in mind that he had like 9.8 yards per attempt. He was 20 for 28. His EPA per play was in like the 80th percentile or something crazy like that. 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. So, and the statistics versus the level of play, they can be different. They diverge a little bit. We've talked about that a ton. But pointing out all these mistakes he made was more to say, hey, Sam Darnold's highs are really high, and in the past his lows were really low. And the problem with him is that he would play a really volatile style of football where you'd hit those highs and lows pretty frequently. In the first 3 games, we mostly got the highs. Last week, we got a little bit of the lows. But this week, we got way more of them, especially like you mentioned in the second half. That first half still had some of those mistakes. But the high highs were still really good. Like his completion percentage over expected was like +9 or something crazy like that on an average depth of target of 10 yards downfield. He was pushing the ball downfield. He was challenging tight windows. He was completing passes. So I don't want to over index on how many mistakes that he made. But relative to the rest of his games this year, this was his worst game. Statistically, one of his better games, 275, passer rating 123.4, but some of this doesn't take into account, the sack fumble, which is not wholly his fault, but, watching him, respond to pocket pressure versus watching like Mahomes respond to pocket pressure. Mahomes didn't have a good day today or anything like that. Sam Darnold probably played better than him. I don't know. It's maybe a little bit too aggressive, but you see in like his game today against the Chargers, there's backside pressure and he immediately notices it and runs away from it. And Darnold just doesn't have that. He doesn't have bad pocket presence, but he doesn't have great pocket presence. And so that's when you get sack fumbles like that, which I believe Blake Randall gave up. So, there were mistakes throughout the game for Darnold. One of them occurred in the first drive. And that really would have changed things if that mistake was more impactful, but pretty good. It's just, I want him to hopefully this is a rut. It's a high level rut if it is, and hopefully he gets out of it because the Vikings can start winning games like 28-6 again. So I would love to see more of that. And this is kind of what's holding them back from doing that.
Yeah, it's not to say that he played poorly. He didn't. It's just one of those, the Vikings are 4-0. These are the things that he can work on. But if this is the lowest of what we see, then this is pretty good. This is...
Yeah, no, for sure. This is the type of play. So if he plays at this level for the rest of the season, like he did in this game, it's going to be very annoying. Like, first of all, it's just going to be annoying because you'll have 1 pick games, 2 pick games, 3 pick games. You'll have a fumble, right? But you're throwing like 10 yards an attempt down the field. You're getting a couple of touchdowns and stuff like that. You'll probably coming out ahead. It definitely takes you into the playoffs to the level of defense the Vikings have. It's just now that the Vikings were 4-0, we're thinking about this differently. If Sam Darnold played like the Jets Darnold for the first 3 games of the season and then plays today like he did today, right? We would call that a massive improvement. We'd like to see more of it. Like, yeah, you still did the stupid stuff, but this great stuff was great. He's changed the level. He's changed the grading curve for himself on this, where now we're just like, well, okay, you've put these games on tape. Well, now that's who we want you to be. Now we want to win by 5 scores. That's who we are now. We used to be pretty content with these 1-score wins. No, we got to win all the time because I hate talking about how much of a fraud this team is. And the better he plays, the less I ever have to say it. So, more 28-6 wins would come if he plays like the previous version of himself. But if he plays like this for the rest of the season, the Vikings make the playoffs. It's just once you're 4-0, making the playoffs is now a secondary goal with your primary goal of making it to the big dance, right? Making it to the Super Bowl. So, yeah, it's nitpicky. He's playing well. He didn't play poorly, but we're now operating on a different skill curve for him. Now we're just saying, okay, O'Connell has helped you become a better quarterback. You've helped yourself become a better quarterback. Now this is what better quarterbacks do.
And he did give up that fumble from the blindside sack and everything. He had another rush a scramble that ended up going for positive yardage, but was like inches away from a potential sack as well. And he did this like move that Cousins wouldn't have, as far as keeping the ball under his control. And a lot of people were pointing out,
he's moving the ball around away from defenders.
It's the not Cousins thing, and just seeing that little change was like, oh, this is good. Okay, I'm enjoying this. Now, the fact that we've had multiple red zone turnovers this year isn't great. And regardless of whether let's talk about whether or not that was actually an interception that probably would have changed the entirety of the game when the Vikings were driving in the third quarter and it was picked off. Was that actually an interception?
No. Okay, so here's the thing. Like, when I evaluate Sam Darnold, I want to treat it like an interception because it was an interceptable pass, right? Most I don't know. We always talk about how they play on that side of the ball for a reason. They don't catch as well. Fine, sure, whatever. Most defenders in that situation would have reeled that ball in. So to me, that's an interceptable pass. So that's a mistake that he made. From a game operation standpoint, the refs made the wrong call. And the whole broadcast crew agreed with that. Like, they all thought that was the wrong call, including the rules analysts. And the rules analysts are generally pretty sympathetic to the refs, given that they were refs. I understand why it was called an interception live on the field. I don't really understand why it was called an interception on replay because, he gets up, he gets the ball, he bobbles it, grabs the ball again, hits the ground, bobbles it, which means it didn't survive the process of hitting the ground, and then his legs hit the air or get up into the air, and he's leaning on his elbow, which is out of bounds, as he finally secures the ball. Should not have been an interception. Would have certainly changed the tenor of the game. Yeah, Darnold can do that better, but you can't give it to the Packers just because the offense threw an interceptable pass. You have to earn the interception. You have to complete the process, and he didn't do that. So, yeah, that wasn't an interception. That was a bad call. The Viking, it's tough because I almost want to say the Vikings kind of got away with it with their 3 successful challenges where all of these borderline calls went their way. But they were all the correct call. Like, all of these were actually completions or incompletions, right? And so I don't want to say that they got lucky there, and then therefore the karmic retribution is, or the karmic balance is that's the interception. That's not really accurate. But still, it feels like it, you know?
Yeah, there were two plays to me that were like the butterfly effect plays, where if they don't go that way, the game is completely different. And that's one of them. And the other one is, obvious to me, is the punt that was muffed. If he would have at the end of the second quarter, if he would have just walked away, not taken the ball, just let that hit the ground and go backwards into the end zone, great. We're gonna kneel it out anyway. Like that led to a Packers touchdown, so that we went to the half 28-7. That play, whether it was the wind, whether it was the sun, that was a major moment that did not bounce the Vikings' way. I don't even know necessarily if that was the right call to stop it from being a touchdown. Like the broadcast was talking about the difference between the muff and a fumble. Because he had called for the fair catch, technically that counted as a muff, correct?
Yes, because he called for a fair catch, which means that you can't advance the ball. Super funny, by the way, that Matt LaFleur almost took the touchdown opportunity away.
I loved
being
that.
Mad.
I haven't seen a coach get a penalty in a while, and I enjoy it. Like in professional, I when I'm doing the announcing, nice touchdown. When I'm doing the announcing for the college. For basketball specifically, you get technicals and everything, and you're right along the sideline, so you get to hear the coach scream out a bunch of obscenities and all that, and that's always fun to see. They were holding LaFleur back at one point.
Yeah, and the best part is that he was like wrong. Like,
completely wrong. Whether he was discussing a phantom timeout or the catch that wasn't a catch, like you weren't going to be able to review that. Like the whole thing with LaFleur losing his mind there was almost worth what happened with the muffed return.
Yeah, I think that if they had screwed up that touchdown opportunity and were only able to kick a field goal, or I guess miss a field goal because of that play, that would have actually made it worth it, even if the Vikings gave up points, because that's so funny that, like, because this is going to be automatically reviewed because we're in the final 2 minutes, so he doesn't have to throw a flag or anything like that. They just have to call it like they see it, and if it's close enough, it's going to trigger an automatic review. And it wasn't close enough. They called it correctly in the field of play. He attempted to catch the ball inbounds. It bounced out of his hands. He chases after it. He gets out of bounds, or rather the ball is out of bounds by the time he secures it again, and he doesn't bring the ball back inbounds. Easy. Done. Now you're at the 1, which, if he had caught it, you're at the 1. Or he did catch it. But yeah, you're at the 1. And now you get this penalty, and now you're at the 15 or whatever, and it's like, Jesus, man, I can't believe you screwed that up. That's so funny. But no, they did actually end up scoring like a play or two after that, so we didn't get kind of he got so mad he cost them points, but we got close.
It was close. Now, one of the reasons why there were so many challenges this game is because Jordan Love, who you could successfully argue should have taken another week to get better, was throwing a bunch of McNabb-style worm burners all game long. And it was really throwing off the receivers and was causing a lot of these, like, was that a catch or not? Was that a bounce pass? What was that? Jordan Love was throwing low, and for the first half, I don't know what miracle drug they gave him in the second half, but during the first half, he did not look like he could put any pressure on that leg while throwing.
Miracle drug might have been Toradol. Who's to say?
Who's to say? He wasn't. Whenever there was, he wasn't interviewed immediately after the game. Only like a little bit later after, so he didn't have a Southern accent that he didn't otherwise have. Looking at you, Aaron Rodgers. That Southern accent is still one of my favorite post-Packer game moments ever. I don't know what happened. Like his mouth isn't closing. But yeah, he looked like a slightly different quarterback in the second half. But like that first half, he couldn't put any pressure down. His throws were all low and looked rough.
Yeah, and he after a scramble, like came up limping and stuff like that.
Justice was calling for him to be benched.
Right,
bench love, which I get that. I personally feel that, but
right, yeah. So I mean, someone replied to one of my tweets with "love sucks," and I'm like, yeah, man, I've been there. But no, it was pretty clear how much his throwing was impacted by that. Like you said, he threw a bunch low. He threw a couple of them really high, which is how the Shaquille Griffin interception happens, which I believe is in the second half. He just wasn't really throwing that accurately in the first half. It was either really high or more often really low. And I know Packers are complaining about the number of drops in this game, and there are a number of passes that were within the catch radius of the receiver that they did not catch. And if that's your definition, then there were 7 or 8 drops in the game. But Love was really maximizing the likelihood that the receivers wouldn't be able to reel a ball in. And so I wouldn't really call it a drop. These are really, really difficult catches to make, and they, couldn't make them. It was a little bit unusual to see him play that poorly in the first half after what looked like somebody who was very clearly impacted by injury, followed by that second half where it was he's cool again. He had some of Mike's magic stuff.
Yeah, right? I'm confident that, I don't think he should have been able to drive home. That's how much medicine I think they put into him in order to be able to play the second half. You
can operate an offense, but not heavy machinery.
Yes. Exactly. That was something, because he was out there and the offense was there was a reason why the Vikings were up 28-0, and it also had to do with 2 missed kicks, which enjoying that. The Packers may have a new kicker come Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah, who's available on because they can't get Greg Joseph, right? Who's available on the market?
They want to call Dan Bailey out of retirement? What are you going to do?
Right.
He's got to be an XFL kicker they can grab. But, that's... You love to see it and you hate to see it. But I am sitting there just in awe of the fact that the Vikings seem to have broken the shackles of the most accurate kicker in the world is the one playing Minnesota. That is...
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Including, you get to include last week in that, and it's just because I was looking it up during the game, because I was he missed 2 kicks. I'm going to make that part of the game story. And then, this near comeback happens. I'm okay, well, I guess that's the game story. But I was looking it up just to, clarify, what the percentages were. And on a pure percentage basis, I believe since you could either do since the Zimmer era or, a decade, they're 1 year apart, whatever. Atlanta is number 1 in opponent kicks made, and the Vikings are number 2. But when you adjust for distance, the Vikings are number 1 with a bullet. And like you said, they're the most accurate kicker in history, whoever's playing the Minnesota Vikings. You can pull up any kicker statistics and then match it against the opposing kicker for the Minnesota Vikings that day. And that opposing kicker is a Hall of Famer. He's the GOAT. So, yeah, seeing that not happen after seeing a missed kick in the previous game, we're in a whole new world.
We're
55 yarders are no longer automatic against Minnesota. Yep. That's crazy. Watch out.
And we have a kicker who's making his kicks consistently, albeit there was an extra point that I had a moment with. But otherwise, this is
kind of snuck in there. Don't worry about it.
Enough.
A little cheeky.
Just enough. But yeah, there was a reason why the Vikings were 28-0 at one point. It's because the Packers offense couldn't get anything going.
Yeah. The Vikings defense played pretty outstandingly, and this is one where you had a bunch of contributions from a bunch of different levels of the defense. So Harrison Smith had a really outstanding game. Cameron Bynum had an outstanding game. Byron Murphy had a very, very good game. So Murphy, I think I bet if you look up the coverage statistics, when they come out, Murphy probably gave up over 100 yards, maybe even over 120 yards. He still had a good game, right? So the touchdown he gives up, he's in pretty decent leverage and stuff like that, and you'd want him to avoid that, but he more than makes up for it with that excellent pick in the end zone. He makes up for it by forcing that fumble on Tucker Kraft that Cam Bynum recovered. On balance, like quite good. Shaquille Griffin, he grabbed a pick, basically bouncing off of Christian Watson's hands, who was, I don't think, the intended receiver anyway of that one. That was really excellent. Obviously, we had your customary Camus Grugier Hill beginning of the game interception. Just another one of those.
I'm enjoying that as becoming a tradition. I am very much enjoying that being a way. All right, so this is just how the game is going to start. It's
excellent. That was, I believe, off of Christian Watson before Watson got hurt. Yeah, Jesus, that looked bad too. Like, one of my knocks on Watson coming out, aside from the fact that he's from NDSU, was like he's got a really tremendous injury history. Like did he play in the game that we watched against JMU?
I don't.
It was like an open question whether or not he would. I think that he did. But he hadn't played all season up until that point.
I would have to look, because I think he was out for I think he was out for nearly the entire season.
Yeah, but I think he played in that game, if I remember correctly. But he only had like 4 or 5 games that season. He missed substantial portions of another season in college. He gets drafted in the second round, misses much more time due to injury. So it happened again. That sucks. That leads to the Camus Grugier Hill interception. There's a fair amount of pressure on Jordan Love. It's actually kind of interesting. So the Vikings, they have a high blitz rate again against a quarterback that's generally been pretty good at beating the blitz by throwing deep, which Justice, I think, described 2 years ago in an interview when he talked about how Jordan Love / always the backers, but specifically Jordan Love, his answer to basically any problem is to throw deep. And so blitzes are one of the problems that he has an answer for, which is to throw deep. And he did that. But the Vikings did a much better job. So I've got the statistics that exclude that 90-yard. It was a 96-yard drive, but like 90 of them were through the air. The 90-yard garbage time drive. So of his 52 dropbacks outside of that, when the Vikings blitzed him on 53.8% of his dropbacks, he only got 6.8 yards an attempt when blitzed, which is still better than when he wasn't blitzed at 5.1%. But like the threat of the blitz was a big part of him being really poor when not blitzed, because he would keep on throwing in the wrong direction. And so the Vikings would show 5 or 6 and then rush 3. And now he's taking forever to figure out where he wants to throw in the pocket. And no one's open, and he's scrambling around, and now he's throwing off platform, and now it's a pick. Really, really good stuff from the blitz, non-blitz perspective. He was under pressure on 42.3% of his dropbacks. That's really high. We talked about this in the past, where basically the break-even mark for pressure rate for a quarterback is just not going to have a good game is 40%. It's nearly an insurmountable pressure rate to overcome unless the other quarterback in the game is also at 40+%. When only one quarterback is 40+%, I believe like the win rate is something, and this is like a Sam Monson stat from a couple years ago, it may have changed, but I believe the win rate's like 15% if you experience 40% plus pressure, and you're the only one in the game to have done that. It's huge, and that's what happened in this game. I mean, there's a couple of throwaways. There's a bunch of, hit while thrown, batted pass at the line of scrimmage. It just like wasn't very good when he was under pressure. It was 4.4 yards an attempt when under pressure. And again, that's on 22 dropbacks. One of them was a scramble. One of them was a sack. 20 of them were passing attempts. 7 of them were completion. So 35% completion rate when under pressure. Everybody gets worse under pressure, some more than others. This is a substantially worse game under pressure than one typically expects. Now, mind you, he did have a pair of drops, so the 4.8 isn't, or 4.4 yards per attempt isn't, completely representative of his level of play, but it was pretty bad. And the pressure came from, first of all, the design. Luke Braun's piece over at Wide Left about how sacks are a Minnesota Vikings stat. One of his only proposed headlines I didn't alter. I actually really like that headline. Usually I just delete his and come up with my own. But that one was good.
As is your right.
Right. But yeah, that was a pretty good one. And he talks about kind of the team focused nature of producing pressure and producing sacks and stuff like that. And that happened in this game. But I did want to highlight a couple of individual performances outside of kind of the design of it. Jonathan Bernard got a bunch of pressure. That was really nice to see. We got a fair amount of pressure. So we didn't get a ton from blitzers, but we had 11 different players get at least one pressure, and 4 different players get at least 3 pressures. Pat Jones, obviously, with his sack. I didn't even talk about him that much in my piece. Maybe I even forgot to mention his name at all, which is kind of a shame, because I think one of our mailbag questions, or at least someone replied to me, one of the two, was like, hey, so is he like good now? And like, yeah, we should probably say that he is. During the Minnesota football party last week, 2 weeks ago, someone asked, like, is he good? And I was like, well, in this game, he was good. But I can't tell you, like, if he's good. But in this game, he had 1 gimme sack, which is fine because he had another sack that was fantastic. And he had a quarterback hit that was fantastic. And he had this run defense that was really good. And we're at a point where, he's not grabbing cheap sack after cheap sack. Like, he's getting a couple of the freebies. It's always nice to get a couple. So he's getting a couple of the DJ Wanham sacks. But he's also making his own. And he did that in this game, too. One of his sacks was entirely, self-created. His hit was self-created. Really good stuff. So Grenard, Pat Jones, Jihad Ward, again, somehow keeps on producing. That's fantastic. None of them were particularly phenomenal against the run, but they were good. Harrison Phillips was really good. I don't think he got that many pressures. I think he got like a quarterback hit and a couple of pressures aside, but he was really great at holding attention to create one-on-ones for other people. That's really fantastic. Pretty good in run defense in this game too. Couple of stops near the line of scrimmage. So too with like Blake Cashman, who had a really good game. But yeah, Van Ginkel, probably the first game he's had where he wasn't one of the best 3 defenders on the field for the Vikings. He's just going to have games like that. But what's really cool is that other people get to step up. So we saw that with Grugier Hill. We saw that with Cam Bynum. We saw that with Byron Murphy. We saw that with Blake Cashman, who I would argue had an up and down game, but I'm going to call him, a top level defender for the Vikings because he had a couple of stops near the line of scrimmage, because he had a couple of important tackles. He did screw, I think, a touchdown up, and he screwed up like another run defense moment. So I'm sure his PFF grade won't be high, but for the most part, I thought it was like a pretty good game. And so a lot of these people, like, stepped up, when you're not having a Josh Metellus game, which Ginkel maybe I think was a little bad relative to what we've been seeing. Metellus was just quiet, and I think there's a difference between the two. But Smith made up for it. Bynum made up for it. I already mentioned Murphy and Griffin. But yeah, individually, a lot of really great defensive performances. Would like to see a little bit more consistency from, from Andrew Van Ginkel and from Pat Jones and Jonathan Grenard, who were not as effective in the run game as they have been in the past couple of games.
Which isn't to say that Van Ginkel didn't have had a bad game. He had like a couple of pressures there that definitely were useful.
Yeah, so he had a critical pressure that led to either a third down miss or a turnover.
It was a turnover.
Yeah, that was really fantastic. That was really big.
The announcers literally said, "And here comes Van Ginkel out of the," like trying to warn Jordan Love that Van Ginkel was about to get him.
Well, that means both linebackers had a pressure lead to a turnover. That's awesome. The problem is with Van Ginkel in this game, it just wasn't as solid because he was the missed tackle responsible for the Tucker Kraft touchdown. He did miss some stuff in coverage. He missed a tackle, I think, of Jordan Love. We're not used to seeing from him. He's had a really incredible start to his Minnesota career, and so this isn't where we typically see him. But again, the great thing about this defense is that like a bunch of people can kind of step up and perform, like Bullard and Bynum and Smith and so on.
Yeah. So what happened in the second half that led to the Packers having so many points unanswered?
I mean, there's a couple of things. One is that the Packers kind of adjusted a little bit, especially on offense. They slowed the cadence down to make the Vikings kind of reveal, who was blitzing and who wasn't, which gave Love a little bit of an easier opportunity, kind of identifying where he wanted to go with the ball, where those blitzers are leaving and stuff like that. So that was one. Two, I mean, the Vikings were pretty lucky in the first half, and calling a team lucky is not also calling them not good or calling them fraudulent. But it is pretty difficult to go up 28-0 for most of the first half, or for the first half until the final moments, without being both lucky and good. And they were both. They were both lucky and good. So, getting, those missed kicks, that was nice. Getting a player who was not fully healthy kind of helps you out a little bit. Getting the calls right on the near incompletions, like they were getting a little bit lucky. And then they were capitalizing on it with like, hey, Jordan Addison's wide open in the end zone. Let's throw it there. Like, that's good. Like you did good stuff as well as lucky stuff. And that luck kind of ran out in the second half. In fact, it kind of started swinging in the opposite direction, with the Xavier McKinney interception, which is like, maybe probably shouldn't have called it that way. The fumble and who's recovering which fumbles, the muff, same thing. So the luck kind of runs out, and in pretty significant ways. I guess the muff is technically right before the end of the half, but I think we think of it like, oh, that was kind of the beginning of kind of the problem moment, right? So it starts with the muff, and you've got, this interceptable pass that gets technically intercepted. You've got, a couple of these missed tackles in the run game. You're not getting kind of the same leeway that you got early on from the officials, which again, the officials did get the calls right when Minnesota challenged it. They just also got it wrong with the Xavier McKinney interception. These things happen. That's part of it. And then I think that the offense kind of got, I'm not going to say figured out, especially because they were able to get some points at the end and drain the clock, but it felt like the offense just wasn't getting as much done until it finally saw some opportunities to go back to Jefferson. I think that, the defensive coordinator Hafney did a pretty decent job adapting to what he'd been seeing and then beginning to take it away. And so it was upon the Vikings to kind of figure out new solutions to that. So yeah, I think that's basically what happened in the second half. Some luck flipped the other way. They saw some really good coaching adjustments from Green Bay that the Vikings were late to, stuff like that.
It's also worth noting that Aaron Jones was working his ass off to try to get a touchdown. He was
and they were a little bit focused on it.
Yeah,
I'm going to say that.
let's be honest. Whenever Aaron Jones got the ball and was like close to breaking it, they had 3 or 4 guys right there. Like their goal this game, they might not have cared about a win or a loss. They wanted to keep Aaron Jones from jumping into the stands.
Yeah, evidently, and this was from a tweet that I can't verify because I didn't see the video, but it linked to a video, so it's pretty unlikely that they lied. Anyway, evidently, Aaron Jones apparently was talking about the trash talk he was getting during the game. And the Packers were talking, like a couple of Packers defenders, like 3 or 4 of them were telling him that he wasn't going to get into the end zone and get a Lambeau leap. And he was just like, well, I mean, focus on the scoreboard, man. You've got some other stuff to worry about.
I will say, and I get critical of players who do this, especially when you're down by as much as the Packers were. But when the Packers scored that first touchdown at the end of the first half, there was no big celebration. There was no big. He got it, recognized they were down 21 or 22 at that point still, and just got it, get off. Like I'm not celebrating the fact that I got a touchdown when we're down 28-0 before this. Like got off. Like I recognize how poorly the situation is. Because you look like you look terrible at that point. It's like yeah. Play like you've been there. But yeah, Aaron Jones was just absolutely trying so, and you wanted it for him. You absolutely wanted it for him.
Yeah, dude, he's been really fantastic. In this game, he finished. It's like one of those games where you look up the final yardage and you're like, wait a second, what? He had 4.2 yards per carry. What was his like total yardage? And 4.2 is like pretty pedestrian. Like I think the NFL average is something like 4.25 or something like that, or it has been in the past, maybe 4.3. And it's like, but he got 93 yards, so that's actually pretty nice. But 4.2 yards a carry. Like, what's up with that? That feels like he felt like he was great. And I looked at the EPA per play, and it was in the 75th percentile or something like that. It was like better than that. His success rate was like 42, 41%. His EPA per play was minus 0.03, which, mind you, the EPA on running plays per carry is substantially negative because, passing plays just get you more yards on average, right? Regardless of the down and distance, they just do more for you, generally speaking, except in very isolated circumstances, which we will talk about when we talk about the Vikings game management. But generally speaking, oh man, sorry, Josh Allen threw a dime that was dropped.
It was absolutely dropped.
Oh man. It's to Keon Coleman too, who's a guy that I was down on in the draft from like a skill perspective. Like I didn't think he was
the JC Penney guy, wasn't he?
Yeah.
The guy who's talking about coats. Yeah, that's there's not very many. There's not very many Bills.
The key is to buy him in the summer, right?
Yeah. There's not very many Bills receivers I cheer for. He's the one that I cheer for.
So that's the thing. So from a draft perspective, I didn't like him as a pick. I didn't like him as a prospect. I thought he was a bad player. And then I see all these videos coming out, and he rules. And I'm like, okay, I want to be wrong about this guy so bad.
Yeah.
He's so awesome. He's like literally playing like a kid in the stadium, where they introduce him to the stadium for the first time, and he throws an imaginary touchdown pass to himself, and then he does like the crowd goes wild a bit. Like, oh my God, this guy rules. Anyway, Aaron Jones' EPA per play was substantially higher than you would expect from a running back, just generally speaking. And so what usually happens in those situations is if you have a pedestrian or low yards per carry and your perception is that actually this guy played well or the EPA per play is actually really high, is usually two things. Like one, that means he didn't have a breakout run longer than 20 yards, which in this game his longest was 17. But your success rate was high, which I already established, 42. That's really high for a running back. But also it means that probably the runs that you're running don't require a lot of yardage to be successful. So a 3rd and 2 run that gets you 3 yards decreases your yards per carry and increases your EPA per play, right? So there was a fair amount of that. And they were running on 2nd and 6 and he was getting 5. These are good runs, right? But it just, the yards per carry doesn't look that efficient. He played efficiently. The recollection that you might have from the game without looking at the box score was that he was efficient as a runner, and your recollection in that scenario would at least be correct then. It was nice. And so, he got 46 yards in the air, 93 on the ground, nearly 150. It was 139. Yeah, I did math correctly. 139. That's awesome. He got to stick it to the Packers a little bit with that high yardage total. Didn't get the touchdown that he wanted. That's fine. But the Vikings were feeding him the ball a lot, but in ways that maintained his efficiency, which you don't really expect. Not a ton of 26 touch running backs are actually very efficient at the 26th touch, So really good game from him. Like I said, a lot of this stuff comes down to blocking. The run blocking in this game was kind of inconsistent with the pass blocking. Christian Darrisaw was the only offensive lineman in my notation that looked good in both run blocking and pass protection. Brown O'Neill, Blake Brandel, both good pass protectors, despite Brandel giving up the sack fumble. Garrett Bradbury, Ed Ingram, not as much. Pretty significant liabilities. Now, they didn't give up a ton of pressures or hits because I think when the interior pressure arrives, Darnold does a pretty good job getting rid of the ball, and so it doesn't look like – sometimes it doesn't even get logged as a pressure. But it disrupted the passing game a lot. On the other hand, both of them were very good as run blockers. And so you're in a game where you've got 3 good pass protectors and 3 good run blockers, and it's an overlap of 1. It still ended up producing a pretty efficient game on the ground and a pretty efficient game in the air. What was Sam Darnold's pressure rate in this game? I have it down somewhere. Let's take a look. His pressure rate in this game, 36%, so slightly higher than the NFL average. He did not play well when he was under pressure. In fact, like I said, it was probably his worst game. But he played all right in a clean pocket. So, Aaron Jones played well. The offensive line could have played better, but it didn't play catastrophically bad or anything like that. Really great receiving group. So, yeah, I don't know. A lot of interesting storylines coming from the game.
Well, let's wrap this one up here, and the Vikings are 4-0. The Vikings are on top of the NFC North. The Vikings, I believe, now have 3 games on the Packers, as far as the lead in the North is concerned, and are looking pretty good right now. This is a team, and
this is a team, and
this might be the most
like.
This might be the most Keenum-ish game that we've seen so far this season.
For sure. Yeah, this was definitely the most Keenum-ish game. Darnold put a bunch of throws at risk and got away with it. Every so often you have to commit like a train robbery in a football game, and the Vikings did that. Great, good job. Please don't have to do that in the future. Fantastic. But this team is like pretty good. They're good. It doesn't to me feel anything like 2016, where I was like, this is going to turn around, man. This is not this. We're all going to be waking up in a couple of weeks wondering what happened. And I'm telling you right now, this team is not that good. Was it through 3 weeks they scored more defensive and special team scores than offensive scores or something like that?
Yeah, we're just waiting for the offense to catch up.
Yeah, it was just like, this is not going to happen, man. Nothing like that. Defense is playing well, top 5. Offense is playing well, top 5, I think, by EPA standards. That's a pretty good, and the success rate is high, so it's not just like explosives on broken plays or anything like that. That's a pretty good formula, man. Keep that up.
Yeah, this is good. I had said to just about anyone who would listen, if the Vikings handle the Packers, this fan base is going to be just insufferable. And we're reaching that point. But the Packers did just enough to be able to maybe delay that a week, just because of how the game ended. But it's about time to get excited about this team. This is and curses and danger, whatever. Like, it's about time for people to really appreciate how ridiculous this season is and what is coming. Like, this is good. This is fun.
Yeah.
Not every Viking season is a horror movie. You can have fun knowing what's like. I've seen so many posts online about like, oh, curses, this is coming, or can't get our hopes up because of this. Like, at some point you can drop the bit, and I'm guilty of this too. But you can drop the bit. This is a very fun team. At this point, just enjoy it. Try to let some joy into your life with a Case Keenum-esque season. Because that was fun as hell.
Yeah, I think, after the couple of years the Vikings have had, if you could have another 2017, like, yeah, obviously the NFC Championship game hurt a lot. But you would do it again, right? Like, not if you're the Chiefs, right? Not if your expectations are where they are there. Mm-hmm. But where the Vikings have been, you take a 2017 every so often just to feel something.
Yeah.
Guess what?
We talked about this last week. It's like, this is where we're at. No one expected this. We had one of the worst potential offs. We had one of the worst off seasons you could have. We literally had a corner die. And like, this is where we're at. No one expected this. Enjoy this. I implore you.
First round picks got hurt, one for the season. The 4th round cornerback died. The guy that was going to start at the nickel got an ACL injury. Like, man, those all before the season. Like, geez.
This is and it's important to note, this is the hard part of the schedule. This is the hard part. This is the hard part of the schedule. The Vikings go to London. I will not be, but the Vikings will be going to London next week to play the Jets, who we will talk about in a moment. And then they got the bye. Like, this is the hard part of the season right now.
Yeah, when we were doing like season preview type stuff, and by we I mean like not just us on the podcast, but like all of the beat writers and stuff like that. We were talking about how it would be great to come out of the first 5 weeks 2-3, right? Just steal one from one of these good teams, beat the Giants, steal one from one of the good teams, and then just kind of beat or meet expectations for the rest of the season. Try to split the series with the Lions and the Packers, beat the Bears both times. Now you're in the playoffs, right? Like, we were talking about ways to manage the beginning
to
of this
backdoor
season.
into the playoffs.
Yeah. And now it's just like, hey, you're the top seed, baby. Play like it.
Act like you've been there before. Like,
Yeah.
This is great. Enjoy it. This is ridiculous. So let's get into my new favorite segment, which is what did we learn this week? And I've learned that one day, and more of a realization than learned, one day Deshaun Watson will take his last sack, and it will be sad. And it's a bit like when you put your son down for the last time, or your daughter down for the last time, and you don't pick them up again. And it sneaks up on you, just like a sack on Deshaun Watson.
The final play of the Browns' offensive attempts against the Raiders. Geez, man. The Raiders who don't have Devontae Adams, or was Max Crosby in that game? I don't think so. So you don't have your best offensive player, your best defensive player. The Browns struggle, right? Final play of the game, Deshaun Watson has 2 open receivers, doesn't see them, scrambles around, gets hit hard.
By 3 people.
Yeah.
This was a pile.
It was wonderful, man.
This was not just one guy broke out untouched. No, there were 3 guys hunting him down.
So that was wonderful. The Browns, I just don't know, because when Deshaun Watson was threading together some pretty good passes, Amari Cooper was dropping them. A bunch of people were like, oh my god, Amari Cooper drops, that's crazy. And it's like, hey, remember Raiders Amari Cooper? He's just back.
Yeah,
against the Raiders, with the Raiders, doesn't matter.
This turns out to just be Amari Cooper. He can have flashes, but this is what he is.
Yeah, so that was awesome. That every time Deshaun Watson did something positive, it was stolen from him, and every time he did something negative, it was fun to watch.
Yeah, so that's the train wreck that is the Browns. I also learned today that you can throw for -7 yards at the half and still win the game. Unreal.
My gosh.
Unreal.
Yeah, so Bo Nix was at the half 0 for 10 on throws past the line of scrimmage and 7 for 7 on throws behind the line of scrimmage for a total of -7 yards.
Yes.
Now he did get some yards in the second half. He got 67 whole yards, bringing his total to 60.
To 60. The lowest total this millennia of a winning quarterback. That's a hell. Can we get that in a plaque and just have him display that in his locker?
That's such a Bo Nix stat, dude. Cortland Sutton got 60 yards, and technically other receivers got positive yards, but as you can imagine, it was balanced out. I think I'm right about this guy. Okay, so the weather was pretty bad. That's a big component here. I know we're only 4 games into the season, but I think this guy's bad. And the Jets are worse. They're fantastic.
Yeah, well, look, if Aaron Rodgers is the reason why they won last week, Aaron Rodgers is the reason they lost this week. You're going to be in a situation where that is how many... he threw for 60 yards. 60. He had there were players on this team who ended with negative yardage. It was
plural
bowling, multiple players. This was bowling shoe ugly. I had this game up with the Vikings at one point, and I had to turn it off because I kept looking at that game instead. It was just some of the most baffling quarterback play. And Rodgers, I don't know. I just happen to think that this was if Rodgers can take all the glory, he can take all of the blame too.
That's part of it.
Oh my God! Next week is gonna. I want to say next week is going to be fun. I want to see what happens when Aaron Rodgers and Brian Flores meet again. I want that to be everything I dream about.
Yeah, hopefully it's as fun as it sounds, man. That's going to be great.
Also, I learned that the NFC East is an absolute mess right now, with the Washington Commanders on top. Wow.
Dude, Jaden Daniels might be great? Question mark?
He had a couple of nice moves. He looked like a rookie for a little bit there, but he definitely was cooking by the end of it.
Yeah, the start was not as strong, but yeah, no, he looked great. that guy is pretty good. I don't know what I think about Washington's pass rush yet. It feels like when they succeed, it's not always against teams with great pass protection. So I guess we'll see how that goes. Maybe my perception is wrong, but that was kind of my perception heading in, and that's my perception coming out of that game. But yeah, man. And dude, I'm just so happy for Terry McLaurin. So was it last game? Jane Daniels had like the highest completion percentage of any rookie quarterback in NFL history in a single game. Which I honestly would have thought that was Bo Nix. Like I honestly would have expected that to be that. But no, you have to throw passes past the line of scrimmage at some point, and Daniels is good at that. And so that was like 91.6 or something like that. And in this game, it was like an 88% completion rate. Mind you, completion rate's not a very good statistic for determining quality, but when paired with a really high yards per attempt, tells you that somebody is operating with a high level of consistency, which was not the expectation for his rookie year coming out. I'm so happy for Terry McLaurin. I've been banging the table for how good this guy is for like years. I think people who listen to this podcast know that I like bring him up every couple episodes, be like, this guy's good. Yeah, he's good. And now he gets to have like the attendant yardage that comes with being a good receiver. Got a touchdown like at the end of this game. They won like 35 to, I don't know, like 14 or something like that. Against Arizona, a team that a lot of people thought like had a pretty good shot at making a playoff run.
Should have handled them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I don't know. Jaden Daniels is good. The receiving group is pretty good. Everyone, was bagging on them for trading Jahan Dotson. Me too. I was there. I was bagging on them. They're fine. They're good at receiver, man.
You've got the Cowboys, who are secretly bad. The Giants, who I don't know who's starting for them for quarterback next game, but you've got that. You've got the Commanders. And you have the Eagles.
The Eagles, yeah.
And which I don't know what to make of Jalen Hurts' situation over there.
Yeah, man. He's not like pushing the ball. Did he get another rushing touchdown in this game? Yeah, he lined up, and I remember that. It's important because I have like a rushing touchdown over for him. But for like the season. But yeah, the Eagles. Something ain't right. And it's not just the fact that Jason Kelsey's not there anymore. Like, obviously, that's playing a pretty big role.
That feels like a big part, but not the biggest thing going on there.
Yeah. So Hurts is like... So he's always had a pretty high sack rate, but right now it's like he's pressing a lot, and so he's holding onto the ball a ton. He's getting a lot of sacks. I think he had like 6 sacks in this game, which on 30 attempts means 6 out of 36. That's not good. That's a catastrophically bad sack rate to take. Here's a Prize Picks tip, by the way. Now that Bryce Young is not starting, it's always mispriced. Whenever you can get a sack over under, which is not often, and it's up against somebody like a Jalen Hurts who's at a 10% higher than 10% sack rate, that's not a bad pick. This is not gambling advice. But it historically has worked out well for me when I find somebody with a plus 10% sack rate, and then there's a 0.5 sack prop on their leading sack artist. It's not a bad way to live. I'll say that. But yeah, 15% sack, that's awful. 16%, awful. But yeah, the offense is basically Saquon Barkley, and you can't have that if like he's very good, obviously, but like your offense is supposed to be Saquon Barkley plus AJ Brown plus Devonta Smith. Now I know Brown is injured, but man, it's tough to live like that, which is why they only got 16 points. It's tough to live like that. The Bucs obviously quite good, faltered a little bit last week, good again this week. they're going to be a pretty dangerous NFC team.
Yeah. So the NFC East is I don't exactly know what to make of it, but I do know the Commanders are well in command of the top spot there. What did you learn this week?
Well,
other than the Discord has all these Photoshop pictures of you that they decided to post on their on your birthday.
Yeah, I didn't love that.
We're showing love the best way that we can through tribute.
Okay, I'll leave that. Hey, Joe Flacco is still good. That's great. I love it, man. Keep it up. Anthony Richardson got hurt in this game.
That Colts thing is questionable, right? Like the bringing Richardson back out.
Yeah, I don't. So after the game, they were like, "Yeah, I mean, he was just sore." I was like, "Okay, but you like took him out for like a while. Like, he was in the blue tent. He didn't come back out. Like, he's like, I guess it's a hip pointer, so not like a ton of risk of re-injury, I guess. But that was weird. Also, Flacco was just playing better. Which sucks because after week 1, we were like, "Yeah, Anthony Richardson has it. This is great. This is good." And it's like, okay, but he did only complete like 40% of his passes. They were just all bombs. So looks pretty good. But yeah, Joe Flacco's pretty good at this still, which is crazy. After the game, he was interviewed, and someone asked him if like, hey, like, I forget what the question was, but it's like, you know, does Anthony Richardson see you as Joe Cool? And he's like, well, just the other day he was telling me that his mom's birthday is like 8 days away from mine, so there's no chance on the planet that he thinks I'm cool. Good Lord. Anyway, he's good. I'm learning that Doug Peterson has to go, and that 2017 was a long time ago. We got to stop giving this guy credence. I'm still a Trevor Lawrence truther. I am. It is once again the coach's fault that he's not playing well.
What's it like on that island?
I'm going to die on that hill until a third coach that I actually like comes up and proves me wrong.
It's going to be a Belichick situation. He ends up in Jacksonville.
That's a rumor. A lot of people are saying that Belichick is interested in the Jaguars and or vice versa. So, I mean, you have a quarterback that a lot of people like that is supposed to be secretly good, which is like crack for Belichick. You've got a pretty established running game. You've got an opportunity to build an offensive line. You've got the beginnings of a receiving core. I could see it. And then, you know, I don't know. Belichick's also like 75 or something like that. So yeah, maybe not.
That's the other thing is that Belichick wants the most wins ever. Like it's clear that's what he wants. And he's
he's chasing it. Yeah.
He's like a season and a half away from it. And I don't know if I don't know what exactly you're hoping to get in that first year with that lineup over in Jacksonville.
The problem is there's just like not a ton of winning teams looking for new coaches.
That's kind of how you end up in a situation where you need a new coach. Like that's kind of the deal. I guess we'll see. But yeah. Let's get into the mailbag. Because the first question is important from Dave, who asks, does the Packers' moral victory mean that the Vikings didn't actually win their Super Bowl this year?
No. Their Super Bowl has an asterisk, but we all know that asterisks vanish. So yeah, no, it's definitely a moral victory for the Packers, but that only translates into an asterisk on a Super Bowl. And if you look at the history of Super Bowls, the ones with asterisks don't actually have the asterisks. Like if you check the 2009-2010 Super Bowl Lombardi thing, there's no asterisk anywhere, which is crazy because they definitely cheated. So same thing here. You know, there's an asterisk on it, and you can't take it back. They don't vacate the win.
Yeah, as it turns out. For those who are unfamiliar with the bit, there's a long-standing tradition on Norse Code that because Packers fans like to declare that whenever Minnesota comes and plays Green Bay, that if Minnesota wins, that's their Super Bowl for the year. We have a linear trophy that goes through the season as to where it ends up going if the Vikings lose.
When someone beats the Vikings, they get that Super Bowl trophy. Yep. And then when the Vikings play the Packers again, there's another Super Bowl that materializes into existence.
Yep.
And then there's a whole decay process, which mathematicians... I described it like offhand once. I was like, oh yeah, no, you lose half of the Super Bowls after the season. And so they kind of ghost around for a little bit until they disappear. And then we've had like mathematicians track the exponential decay of Super Bowls, which is fun, but also mind-boggling. Anyway, thanks for writing in, the last guy who did that.
It was both incredibly confusing and a statement of how you need something better to do with your time. But we appreciate your skills and your education.
Yeah.
Which, as a side note, by the way, we did not watch Christian Watson play. He did not play that game. I just pulled up the stat line for him at NDSU per game. He was not playing that game.
Play. Okay, yes. He was supposed to play. Didn't get it. Oh my God, Josh Allen! Holy crap!
Yeah. But yeah, Christian Watson, we did not end up seeing playing that game. He did play the championship game, but he didn't play the semifinal one, which is what we saw. Let's go to Zach Dixon, who asks, lately I've been hearing that the Flores defense is designed to stop the Shanahan offense in particular. Are people just saying that because that's all we've played so far, or is there something more there? Also, is Jordan Love the new Kirk Cousins with all these garbage time stats?
So answer to 2, yes. Answer to 1, so a lot of that comes from the way that some pretty educated people like Cody Alexander at Match Quarters have talked about the Flores defense, and less just like this is what's been happening this year. It is designed to complicate the reads that come embedded within the Shanahan system. These aren't endemic to all Shanahan coaches. Like, for example, the McVay branch is a little bit more explosive in the way that it does progressions. It's a little bit more focused on crossers and stuff like that. You can see that like Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua running out of the slot. But we see the O'Connell version of that, focus a little bit less on the slot and focus more on over routes, which are still kind of a crossing route, over routes and dig routes a little bit more. So there are elements that are kind of shared among them. A lot of it includes play action, of course. A lot of it includes zone running. They've all kind of diverged that way. But those shared elements kind of give rise to kind of the way that the Flores defense operates, which is to kind of attack some of the tendencies that are a big part of that system, whether it's to get on outside shoulders of outside runs or to attack the quarterback on runs to prevent play action from being effective against certain, versions of that, to keep high zones to force short throws, then tackling those short throws. Like, it's just kind of the way that these progressions work, and it kind of toys with them. That's what, Cody Alexander and some of these other guys are talking about. This is something that they discussed heading into this year. So it wasn't just because of who the Vikings have played thus far. So that's something to kind of keep in mind, but I do like this kind of style of question because I want to revisit it later in the year after we've got more non-Shanahan offenses to look over.
Let's go to Yannick Eckhart, who says, who asks, did LaFleur solve our defense in the fourth quarter? And if so, who or what did he sacrifice to do so? And was it just the usual shredding of a prevent defense?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think the final 90-yard drive was a lot of prevent defense. I think the Vikings still made mistakes, but I don't think that was like a schematic mistake. I think the Vikings were not playing their usual scheme, but I think, a couple of these players were out of position. That includes Harrison Smith, who I praised for the game. But I think that portions of that scoring run from the Packers occurred while the Vikings were playing, quote unquote, genuine defense. I don't know that it solved anything. Like, I don't know that the Flores defense has been, quote unquote, figured out this early into the season or as a result of this game. But certainly, if I were an offensive coordinator, I would take a look at this game to see how receivers got open and see if I could replicate that. So certainly that's something they have to, continue watching out for.
Next question is from Kyle Slaby, who asks thoughts on the 2 punts on 4th and 1. Do you think Kevin O'Connell is a little more aggressive in the future with these situations?
I think these are kind of a product of the Vikings score differential in these situations. So the Vikings were like 90+%, I think, both times when they made that decision. So I would have preferred that they go for it. So I ran it through the Ben Baldwin calculator. And both of them suggested that the Vikings were better off going for it, but they were by very small margins. So the go for it success rate on the first one, which was in the second quarter, late in the second quarter, was 67%. And if you failed, you had an 89% win probability. If you succeeded, you had a 95% win probability. And so the math for that is going for it gives you a 93% win probability. A punt gives you 92. And you're 57 yards away from the opponent end zone. The one in the third quarter that was on 4th and 1 was you were 58 yards away from the opponent end zone. The success fail was essentially the same, but the odds of failing, the percentage were much higher because it was later in the game and the Vikings were still up by like 27 points at that point, or 21 points at that point. These are minuscule because the Vikings are always at plus 90 in these decisions. And so it ultimately didn't matter that much because it was difficult to manipulate the win percentage either way. But I personally would have preferred that they go for it, especially because they were having such success running the ball. Now, mind you, they did run the ball on 3rd and 1 late in the game. And then they, on 4th down, I think it was it a jet pass or a run to Jordan Addison, and that didn't succeed. Or Jalen Naylor, that was it. And that didn't succeed. And that happens. I was kind of more thinking about a run up the middle, but I appreciated that they actually did that. That was a better spot in the field to do it. But the reason that you go for it here is that like 58, 57 yards from the opponent end zone is that there's not a ton of value in punting. And I mean that relative to other punts. Because there's a good chance that one of those punts is a touchback, which is what happened on one of these 4th and 1 punts. One of them was a touchback, which means that you essentially saved 30 yards of field position from a failed 4th down attempt. Okay. So if you're not like perfect at punting, this is not a great spot to do it. 4th and 11, which is in between these two 4th and 1s, I definitely understand it. The announcers were a little bit more aggressive than I thought they'd be. They'd be like, well, you think about going for it here. I'm like, no, you don't. It's 4th and 11. Of course you don't. But yeah, they were a little bit more aggressive about it. But 4th and 1, I think that they should have, for sure.
Next question is from Noah, who asks, question for Arif's curse corner. Has the Vikings kicker curse officially moved east and inflicted the Packers with kicking woes? Would the curse still affect the Vikings, or would they be free of its grasp now that it has a new host?
I think actually this is interesting because the Vikings curse is actually twofold, right? It's both the Vikings kickers and who kicks against the Vikings. It's like the secret shadow version of it. And man, it seems like that. I don't know if the curse plays kind of like the Vikings do, where they trick you every year, that's something, but that hasn't been my experience. So maybe I'm not going to consider it a settled matter until they win a Super Bowl, but certainly it seems like that this is an accurate diagnosis that the curse has found a new host, and who better than the people across the river?
Tricks above replacement, maybe?
Ooh, I like that. Yeah. The Vikings have a very high tricks above replacement for sure.
Let's go to Eli, who asks, for Arif's gambling corner, I have bet on the Vikings money line every week. Should I keep doing that for luck, or should I stop due to the fact that they won't be underdogs anymore? This once again, this is not necessarily gambling advice, nor is this podcast containing any gambling advice. Whatever we used to say back in the day at the end of our show.
Yeah, no gamble advice given, etc. So on. No, I mean, maybe.
That's about it. That's the way you get away from doing gambling advice. No, maybe.
So the issue is that the Vikings will have substantially changed what would be a bettor's power rankings when they go into setting kind of the odds against a neutral. So the way that you typically do it, and bettors have a much more sophisticated model, but the way that you typically do it is you figure out how this team would do against a league average team on a neutral field, and then you adjust for the field and the team. And now the Vikings are essentially at the top of the list in terms of power rankings. Based off of whatever kind of efficiency factors that you would use. So net EPA per play, net success rate per play, whatever gamblers would use. But whatever your model uses, the Vikings have had pretty good success on sustainable metrics like that. So after kind of a 4-game sample within this new environment where you've got Sam Darnold and Aaron Jones and like a healthy receiving core, you'd probably put them near the top, which means that the way those lines are set are not going to be favorable to bettors trying to bet on the Vikings. And I think that is going to essentially overcorrect, and that the Vikings are going to be pretty bad odds for a while in money line and spread. But also, because you're betting money line, and it only matters if the Vikings win or lose in that scenario, and the Vikings are going to win every game this year, obviously, it's hard to say no, which is where the maybe comes from. But yeah, I think that the odds are evaporating on this one. I obviously, it depends on what the individual game odds are, but I'd probably avoid this one.
Boy, the Ravens are doing their best to do what they've done a couple times this year and give up the big leads. This is real frustrating to watch as somebody who likes the Ravens and watched the Vikings do the exact same thing earlier today. Man, you get up to a 21-0 lead and then it's just turning into this. Not great. Let's go to Andrew, who asks, if this turns out to be Darnold's worst game of the year, are the Vikings going to the NFC Championship game?
If this is the worst he can do, yeah. Yep. Set up the parade route.
somebody last episode ended up putting where should we do the parade route, and I was like, it's too small to do it in just Minneapolis, St. Paul, Bloomington. No, you need to do the entire state. Take 35 up to Duluth, take Highway 2 over to Crookston, take 75 down to Moorhead, and take 94 back down to the cities. Like that is where the parade route goes. It's been too long. This is how it works. The whole state gets to enjoy this, not just the Twin Cities area. Like, I don't care if you're speeding by for like 2 seconds and like throwing candy or waving. Like, you're gonna make a day or so out of this. Be fantastic. Professor Poop asks, finally a game I can enjoy. I have been tired of all the not poopy performance. Not to make this more sour than it needs to be, wins are always good, but who has been the poopiest performer on the Vikings here at the near quarter pole of the season?
That's tough. I mean, Ed Ingram, I guess?
I was thinking of a play specifically for Ed Ingram this game, where Aaron Jones was waiting for him to set up the block, and was waiting for him to do that on the screen. And eventually he did, but only got a couple of yards out of that. If Ingram would have been either faster or better, right, Aaron Jones would have popped off for more than 20. Yeah,
that was very annoying. I think it's probably Ed Ingram. I want to avoid guys who only get like 5 snaps or something like that. And defensively, I don't know that anyone would qualify. Yeah, it's probably Ed Ingram.
Let's go to Damar for Arif's technically correct corner. Would a loss with no punts or turnovers be worse than a loss that has punts and turnovers? Taking into consideration the variables, would this not be a good indicator of quality against an opponent and thusly against the rest of the NFL?
I mean, it depends on who you are. If you're the defense, that is pretty bad. You lost a game where your offense never punted or turned the ball over. That's on you. You're the defense, right? If you're the quarterback, you can probably take solace in the fact that you're almost certainly good. But yeah, it really depends on kind of from whose perspective. I think if you're trying to evaluate how good your own team is, you have to remember that your team also, I think in that game also there were 0 punts or turnovers, right, from either team. But your defense also allowed us a shockingly efficient offensive performance. So I think you can take solace in the fact that your offense is probably good, and that your defense needs to catch up. So that's, it's bittersweet, I guess.
Oh man, that catch. Is that going to count? It looks like it's going to count for Coleman. Man, that's a great catch.
Perfect. He needed one.
Yeah, that's a Josh Allen dot right there. Woo. Let's go to Luke Braun's dad, which shame on you, Luke Braun's dad. I want to be specific on his dad. What honestly happened to Ryan Wright?
I think probably he wasn't the amazing punter that we'd all kind of build him as. This is like what happens when you've got kind of an average-ish punter playing on a downswing of his ability, which is not to say that he's playing super poorly. Like, that the touchback on 4th and 1, the ball did land in the field of play, and I think there was a pretty good hang time, and I just think that the Gunners just weren't thinking about, like, they were more focused on the player who's clearly not going to field the ball than where the ball was going to land, and so that you might have been able to prevent that from becoming a touchback, but I don't know. It's not like he's playing like some of these punters this year are like awful. So it's not like he's playing like that.
He's not a liability.
Yeah, right now. Last year there were a couple of punts where you were like, oh, that 37-yard punt is going to hurt us later, and then it did.
So that's not happening yet. Ingram's left arm asks, was this essentially the peak Vikings experience, both positive and negative? Before you get a chance to answer, I'm going to say no, because everyone left with their ACLs intact.
Oh, that's a good point. I just saw an astounding play where I think it was supposed to be a flea flicker. In the Buffalo Bills Baltimore Ravens game. And Allen catches the ball, and again, it didn't look like that was the intention. And he starts scrambling around to throw it, and then as he does that, sack fumble. So you've got this amazing, incredible play where someone flips the ball to Allen, and he immediately understands what he needs to do with it, and then he just screws it up. And that's like pretty Vikings. The immediate sack fumble after just an athletically impressive play. Yeah. So we did not capture the whole Vikings experience because we needed something both stupid and awesome to happen on the same play.
Yeah. And we would have needed a missed kick and all of that. So no.
Right.
But
from the Vikings, not from,
This was pretty good. Also from Ingram's left arm, for the German correspondent corner, are the Germans aware of the Trojan horse that is the Carolina Panthers versus New York Giants game?
Is it a Trojan horse if you put signage all over it? If you give stats on the horse, can you imagine if
you put stats on the horse?
Right. If they as part of the gift package gave you a little card that's this is how many soldiers it can hold inside. I feel like we're signaling pretty clearly to the Germans what they're in for.
Yeah.
And if they buy into that experience, it's on them at that point.
Yeah. That's we understand that the football doesn't come to your country very often. You might want to sit this one out. I'm just throwing that out there. Jake T asks, is there an actual reason for challenges being capped at 3, even if you get them correct? It was annoying the Vikings got punished on that last 4th down because Kevin O'Connell had to do the ref's job for them 3 times. Also, is Joe Flacco elite?
Clearly Joe Flacco is elite. I think from a fairness perspective, I understand where you're coming from for sure, but from a game operations perspective, there's 2 things. Primarily, initially, the first thing is that they just don't want this stuff to take too long, and challenges obviously add a lot of time. So I think that part of it is just to make sure that the games don't last forever. But second, they do want to preserve the perception of the professionalism of the refs. And I think that refs get too much crap, and I think that they do a better job than we tend to perceive. But if a ref is getting every challenge wrong, that's just going to look bad. And I think at that point, the league is just going to be okay, we can't have this keep on happening. Again, I think that's a much lower priority. But I think making sure all the games end on time is pretty significant.
I happen to be in the camp of, if you get 3, you should be able to get unlimited until you get 1 wrong. I feel
I think so too, but I think that's where the thinking is on why that's not the case.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I would support a course of action that led to more challenges if you just kept getting them right. Is he still go? He is still going. All right. Let's go to Nolan Kaler, who asks, for James and Arif's opera corner, he's giving this to you too. Given that he has seemingly started his swan song in Baltimore, which role would be best suited to launch Justin Tucker's opera career? I'm going with Don Giovanni. I think that's where where he would excel. the all the plans that were laid in, how good he used to be at everything he was doing, and now he's in this shell-shocked state.
That sounds like a great answer, James. I'm just going to steal that one that I definitely thought of beforehand.
This is supposed to be Arif's opera corner as well. You didn't.
I can't help it if we agree, James.
I feel like this is just going on to. I feel like you're just trying to pile on to the person who did the homework. Like, is that?
That doesn't sound like something I do. I was often the person who did all the group's homework, so I'm probably not. That's probably not what's happening here.
Mm-hmm. For actual username in the Discord, for Arif's collection of corners corner. This will be a fun pronunciation. Do you live in a giant icosahedron, a 20-sided die? That's the only way I can see you having as many corners as you do.
Is that I thought it was like dodecahedron. Hold on. It could be both. I mean, there's nothing that prevents different.
Things can be two things, I suppose.
Yeah. Icosahedron is a polyhedron with 20 faces. Okay, great. Cool.
Arif learned something today.
Wait, does that mean dodecahedron is wrong? Hold on. Now I just want to know. No, that is also correct. No, dodecahedron's 12 flat faces. Okay, great. I learned something else new. Okay, yeah. No, I don't have to live in the domicile that has all the corners. Like, I want to make that clear. I can just own the corners irrespective of where I live. You know, like how. Okay, no, that's like a landlord type analogy.
Yeah,
I'm not going there. No.
Nice touchdown, Lamar. Very nice touchdown.
Incredible. It's kind of like the high school one.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't live in a giant icosahedron or a dodecahedron. I just the corners exist in a space independent of where I live.
There you go. Skimbleshanks the Railway Cat asks, for Arif's Nerd Stats Corner, how many years has Arif aged over the past year, and how does that compare to his average years aged per year over the last decade?
Okay, there's a lot of variance in this one. So in 2023, I aged 5 years, and in 2024 thus far, I think I've only aged 2 years. In 2020, we all aged 10 years, and I just feel like 21 was pretty good. I feel like that was like a year over the course of that year. And so like these averages are not really representative of like lifetime rates. I think my my yearly aging per year has gone down overall since 2022. Mind you, there's only been 2 years of data, so we can't really establish a full trend yet. But yeah, on average, probably like 2.5 years per year, based off of like recent over the past decade. If we throw out the outliers like the 10 and the 1, you're probably 2.5 years per year. Right? I mean, you know a lot of the details of my life.
I think that this year has been slightly better.
Certainly. Certainly better than last year.
You've definitely dealt with the police less this year.
Less.
That's an odd way to put it, but that's kind of where we're at.
This reminds me of the last time I was in New York. Not like the last time, which was a couple of weeks ago, but before that, I was visiting. Of course, it was Benetton, and they'd closed off portions of the subway. I think it was for New Year's or something like that. They closed off portions of the subway, and I was like trying to get across the island or across Manhattan, and I just got so mad that I just started yelling at the police. And Chelsea was like, "Arif, you can't be doing that." I'm like, "But they're wrong." And Chelsea was like, "Okay, the thing about the police."
It's I know we reference the more Bomani and Jones often, but it's the situation of the Adrian Peterson episode. I was like, I don't know how many policemen I can beat up, but I know that the number that they're going to send to me is like infinite. So You're not going to win that fight. They're just going to keep coming. This is basically that scene in the second Matrix movie where all of a sudden there's just 1,000 of them and one of you. This does not end well. So, yeah. The answer is 2 years over the last year.
Yeah, 2 years over the last year, 2.5 years average over the last decade.
Yeah. The final question is from Logan Bolsharif, who asks, question for Arif's Legal Corner. If one of your clients was being interviewed by the FBI of suspected crimes, would you advise the client to excuse themselves to use the bathroom and then delete messages the FBI was inquiring about while there?
I assume this is about Eric Adams, who definitely did that. Mayor of New York. Speaking of New York cops.
Speaking of New York and New York cops.
No, but the move to pretend that, to say, not pretend, he's telling the truth, to say that you changed your password after you were advised you were under investigation so that no one else could access your phone, so you could preserve the records, and then you forgot your new, more complex password so you can't access your phone. That move rules. like this guy definitely did the things, which I believe is 6 different countries, election interference, etc. This guy definitely did whatever he's being accused of. But the thing where you're like, oh yeah, no, I changed my password to my phone to help you, but then I forgot my password, so it looks like we're not getting in that phone, huh, guys? That rules. If I were a lawyer, I'd recommend that every time. Also, to be clear, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not barred in any state. Please do not follow my legal advice at all. But hypothetically, were I a lawyer,
baller move.
That rules.
Baller move.
Yeah.
and realistically, he's in a situation too right now where he can kind of sneak under the radar a little bit despite being New York's mayor because of the other famous celebrity that's dealing with going to jail and all of these like other problems that are going to arise from trying to like leave or like trying to negotiate his freedom and everything. Like, look, if you're in a situation where you've set aside $50 million for bail and they tell you no, you should have fled. You should have gone somewhere else, some island, somewhere, a country with no extradition. Find yourself there instead of going, well, I got $50 million. I can just set that aside for no,
you're a flight risk, which you should have lived.
Yeah,
actually.
you absolutely should have just done
the flight
that.
Risk. Yeah.
Like, oh, you can find as much baby oil as you want. Like, I'm gone. Like, you're just.
Yeah. Also, they like found like yesterday that he has. Well, they didn't find yesterday, but Eric Adams just has secret offices where he conducts secret mayor business as opposed to city hall. That's hilarious. Also, like effed up. Like public officials should not do that. But that is very funny.
I like the idea of like having a secret mayor. Well, I say secret mayor's office, but like we have the secret mayor of New York. I feel like that's a title that Ben Nathan should like strive for.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Secret mayor of New York. Well, that's going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. We hope you have enjoyed it. And also, I hope you guys enjoyed the Justice interview, which is a bit funny upon listening again after the game. There were some moments that may have been a little optimistic about what ended up happening. But again, hope you guys enjoyed that. Arif, what do you have to plug?
So I wrote a piece over at Wide Left covering the game, titled "The Vikings Ride the Lightning to the Top of the NFC." We're going to have a new Luke Braun piece, another 60-minute drill. I did one on gambling. I'm going to write out a full piece about gambling. This week's game piece is going to be about obviously the Jets-Vikings game, but I found like a really fun angle that has to do with me visiting Belfast specifically. And then, of course, later London to cover the game. That's coming up. We're going to get, like I said, Luke Braun film breakdown. The last one I already mentioned was the Minnesota Vikings, the sacks or team stat kind of thing. That's a ton of fun. Yeah, a lot of stuff. Almost all of it's over at Wide Left. If it's not, it's a 60-minute drill on Minnesota Football Party. Well, again, hope you guys have enjoyed it. We will be back later this week to preview the Jets game
in all of that glory in London. Arif is still trying to get some get-togethers together for London, and I know that the Discord does have a little group chat going of people going to the London game, which, if you were unaware, Arif, there is such a thing. I believe it's being...
It's not in Germany?
Well, no, but it's if you check in the general section, there's a discussion there about people meeting up with you over in the plans anyway for the London game. So check that out.
Oh, that sounds great.
Once again, because you wanted other people to arrange it and not you. So this you finally got your wish. Congratulations. Sure. You did nothing and it worked out. Just another reminder that in Eagan, Minnesota, December 12th, the Union 32 Craft House, we're doing our live show. Check us out there. But for Arif, my name is James. That might as well have been the sign-off, quite frankly. And just remember that you did nothing and everything worked out for you. And we'll be back later this week. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan of... and he can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. I am your producer and host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or at my personal account at Big Mono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can do so in a couple of different ways. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there. For $3.50 a month, you get bonus material and more. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and pick up some Norse Code merch. Any questions or comments that cannot fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, we thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this.
Hey, all things are possible through the power of Ben DiNucci.